So I have a few topics today. Mhm. I'll simply go through them. So the first one is about something called the space-based solar power. So this is something new that I've heard of, but as I was going through it, it turns out that this is actually quite an old idea. It existed for around past 60 to 70 years, but it practically never got implemented until this year. Actually, it's still not operational. The company that was working on it was on stealth mode. It only came out of stealth on December 2025, means last year, about 5 months now. And the reason it's in news because Meta has signed a deal with this company. So they're actually so this news by Meta contains two different deals with two different companies, and this one is one of them. So the company is called Overview Energy. So their technology is about putting solar panels in space in geosynchronous orbit and then converting the energy into laser and beaming it back to Earth. That's the very simple explanation behind it. And obviously, there's a lot more technicalities to it, but practically that is the idea. So what the deal is that Meta has signed to get up to 1 gigawatts of space solar energy to Earth. So that's the deal. And from Meta's perspective, the deal is definitely obvious. All these companies are building a lot of data centers, and specifically for AI related purposes, which requires lots and lots of energy. And I think we have also talked about previously how much trouble this is causing, not only from an energy point of view, but also how much effect it has had on the environment and so on. But uh, from a practical standpoint, this is one of the ways in which they're coming up with a solution. And there's the other one. The other deal is with another company called Noon Energy. So this one is about storing energy for longer periods of time. Now, so obviously these two companies and these two deals are complementary to each other because one is about getting more energy, the second is about storing the energy for a longer period of time. And for Overview Energy, they are not functional yet. They're not even shown the demo. The demo will be shown on 2028, and it will be fully functional and deployable in 2030 onwards, or at least they have said that as soon as 2030. So far, no actual product, is just the deal has been signed. But as the saying goes, like necessity is the mother of all invention. So the whole uh, requirement of energy is incentivizing these companies to invest in this kind of companies. And I think over a year ago, uh, other companies, I'm not sure, was it Amazon or Microsoft, but one of those big tech companies, I think multiple of those big tech companies have also invested in nuclear energy. And they've also restarted old nuclear power plants that have been uh, not used for decades. I think since the 80s or 90s. The Three Mile Island Energy nuclear power plant is one of those examples. So energy has all of a sudden the requirement has suddenly increased by a huge extent, and they're looking at all different possibilities in which they can get this energy. And this is how Meta is trying to deal with it. So when I look at this looks very much like in sports, in any sports, you can say cricket or football or any other sports. One of the things that they do is, on the one hand, they look at experienced players who are already star players and try to sign them. The other thing that they do is they send scouts to find talents, young talents from different places and sign them at a young age, have the potential, but they have not realized it yet. And we are not, and definitely there is a risk involved while signing young players, is that obviously the talent is there, but you never know whether they will be able to fulfill it or not. Some do, some don't. But it's a risk that is worth the effort, because if they do, the club is going to make a lot of money. So it is very similar. Again, this company is like a young talent. It has a lot of potential, but whether it happens or not remains to be seen. But that's the basic idea. So let me read through this and see what it says. So advancing again, it starts with AI. Advancing AI at this speed and scale we are working toward requires more energy. But today's clean energy technologies have real limits. Solar depends on sunlight, wind depends on weather, and the grid still needs more storage to make the most of both. So yeah, but that's why they're announcing partnership with Overview and this. So let's start with how Overview is going to help with them. So solar energy facilitates, okay, sorry. It's solar facilitates only uh, gen solar facilitates only generate electricity. Okay, oh, it's not facilities, facilities. Solar facilities only generate energy when the sun is shining, leaving them idle for the significant parts of the day. Overview Energy aims to unlock those idle hours. Its satellites sit in geosynchronous orbit, which is roughly around 22,000 miles above the Earth's equator, where the sun is constant. So this helps them collect energy in space and beam that energy to Earth-based solar facilities on the ground as low intensity near infrared light. This means solar farms that currently sit idle at night can keep producing energy around the clock, maximizing their output and creating more energy for the grid. Can we pause this for some time? Is it possible?
Not sure.
পাপাই ফোন কৰি আছে এইটো মই উঠাই লওঁ তাৰপিছত কৰোঁ
Mm.
এইটো এনেকৈ কেনচেল নকৰিবা থাকিব দিয়া ফোন কৰি আহি আছোঁ Okay, so as I was saying, what was I saying? Okay, so the solar energy. So far, what happens is that during the daylight, the solar panels can capture the sunlight, but when it's night, they can't capture the sunlight. But there is more to converting solar energy into electricity than just capturing the sunlight. So again, even I'm not sure what are all the steps in the process of converting sunlight into electricity, but it does seem that capturing the sunlight is simply one process. So if that can be continued throughout the 24 hours by keeping the sunlight keeping the panels in geosynchronous orbit, and it can be beamed down, the rest of the work can be kept continuously being done. So the whole, suppose there is whatever is it called, a solar farm. So apart from the panel, the rest of the things can keep working throughout the day. The only reason why it can't work is because there's no sunlight to work with. So if sunlight can push it, then definitely they can working on it. So that's the problem. Basically, it seems like overview energy is working. But the most interesting thing that I'm curious about is how does this technology actually work? How can it capture energy on space, convert it into something laser, and put it back? For that, I have a video which we will come back to. But let me see. Not this video, someone, something else. Well, this wasn't of much use.
Space solar-energy is a great solution for the power and energy issues that we're going through now because it allows us to take existing infrastructure on the ground and make it work day and night, get more power without requiring any more land area or any more facilities on the ground. And what's great about this partnership is it's the first step towards a future where energy becomes something we can almost instantaneously redirect to where and when we need it to solve the large-scale energy problems of the future.
So that's what it says. Why does it feel like it's AI, even though it's mentioned
Hmm.
founder and CEO? Because specifically this part, I'll show you. There's overlap between two different sound clips.
Space solar-energy is on the ground and make it work day and night, get more power without requiring any more land area or any more facilities on the ground. And what's great about this
You can see
Yeah,
there
this
is
part, yeah.
shift. Yeah,
Maybe they've
it looks
just put it together like that. They
yeah, it
validated
could
it.
be. Yes, that could be. Okay, so again, there's another clip. This is from Meta's VP of Energy and Sustainability, whose name is Nat Selstrom. Okay, let's see what she has to say. Probably
One
she.
of the things that's most compelling about Overview is
Okay, it's he, Nathan. I thought Natalie something. It's
one
Nathan.
of the things that's most compelling about Overview is it's a genuinely new category. Solar collected in orbit, beamed to the existing ground facilities to generate power around the clock is truly transformative for what solar technology can do. And it underpins Meta's energy strategy, which is we invest in the future, not just what's available today.
Okay, there again, what it's trying to say is that they're investing in the future on like potential technologies. So that's about overview energy. Now the second thing is about storing energy for days. So this is where Noon Energy comes in. So what they're saying here is that Noon Energy's technology uses modular, reversible, solid oxide fuel cells and carbon-based storage to provide over 100 hours of energy storage, far beyond what today's lithium-ion batteries can deliver. So again, I do not keep up with what's happening in energy technologies, but from what I can hear read, it seems like lithium-ion batteries are what are being used in most storage systems which stores the solar energy, and apparently it doesn't have the ability to store energy for longer periods of time. And instead of using lithium-ion batteries, if they are using, according to them, solid oxide fuel cells and carbon-based based storage. Again, so that's what they're saying. And as per them, it seems to be better than lithium-ion batteries. So recently there has been a lot of things about this. I think they've talked about this new battery technology that was announced with a bike that has long lifespan. I don't know if I talked with you or someone else, but I think it was announced in CES this year. So that is also drastically way better than what current batteries are capable of. So
You're talking about
recently,
solid state batteries, I think.
yes, maybe that's the one. So these are the two different technologies. It seems like are claiming to make that their battery capacity is much higher than what exists normally. So again, yeah, so it remains to be seen how true those are. So to look at those. Okay, so that's all mostly from their announcement. So that's what those technologies are. So next thing that not in this video maybe, but on a deeper analysis, I have to look into how those things actually work, especially the battery technologies that I have been hearing about, two different, the solid state that we mentioned and this one. But now I just want to know about what is their energy portfolio approach. I want to just
Reliable energy at the scale that AI demands is really based around a portfolio approach of technologies, not a single bet. We're working years ahead with utilities, ensuring that we pay the full cost of our data center energy use so consumers are not negatively affected. And we're also paying for hundreds of millions of dollars in grid infrastructure that benefits everyone. This includes upgrades to power sources, new technologies, substations, and transmission lines. We're making sure that energy keeps pace with what AI makes possible.
It has to be AI. I don't know. I get this feeling. Maybe the words are written by him, but I'm not sure.
Maybe.
But anyways, okay. So again, this has made me curious about this, since they mentioned energy portfolio and all the deals that they are signing. So I'm curious about how the economics or maybe how the deal works. Like so far, because in some of the videos that I watched over the past 1 year probably, that it talks about like the data centers are built in a locality and it is capturing a lot of energy, which is causing the bills to rise and so on in the United States. So when you make this kind of deals, that means you're directly buying it from that company. It shouldn't affect others. So yes, that's another angle of research that I can get into, that I have to look into what they're actually doing here. So anyways, so that was briefly what it is all about. Now coming to the science of how beaming energy from space work. This video is I think almost 3 years old now. So again, it says that this idea is actually quite old. So let's hear what this video has to say.
Solar power is a nice idea, except for the issue with the clouds and the nights. So how about we instead put solar panels up in space and then beam the energy down? This futuristic idea is known as space-based solar power. It's been around since the 1960s, but in recent years, several nations have launched projects to make it reality. I think they're not kidding. Space-based solar power is about to become a real thing. But how is it supposed to work? Is it a good idea to beam energy down from space? What are the pros and cons? That's what we'll talk about today. Why do you want to put a solar power plant into space when you could as well put it right here down on Earth where we need it? Said no British person ever. Solar power might be great if you live in the Australian outback, but not every part of the planet gets sunshine that reliably. It's therefore maybe not so surprising that the British are on the forefront of this race. In 2021, the UK Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy asked the consulting agency Fraser Nash for a feasibility assessment of space-based solar power. The agency pointed out that both space launches and solar panels have become dramatically cheaper, and that we now have the technology to assemble large facilities in space from small modules. The combination of those three factors has brought down the cost of space-based solar power so much that it's now an option to seriously consider. The analysis concludes that it is feasible to realize a constellation of solar power satellites delivering a substantial percentage of the UK's energy needs by the early 2040s. They titled their report De-risking the Pathway to Net Zero. I hope the Oxford Dictionary called to have a word with them. Once the report was done, they didn't hesitate. Last year, the Brits founded the UK's Space Energy Initiative to get solar power to space. It's a collaboration of nearly 50 companies and research institutions, including Airbus, Cambridge University and Lockheed Martin. But the Brits aren't the only ones who are pushing forward with the idea. China has an ambitious initiative for space-based solar power. Indeed, they announced last year in June that they hope to complete it 2 years ahead of schedule. In 2028, they want to do the first experiment to demonstrate power transmission from a satellite to Earth, and by 2030, they want to have a power station in orbit. The Japanese company Japan Space Systems wants to get it done even earlier, by 2025. Just in November 2020, the European Space Agency launched a project called Solaris with the somewhat passive-aggressive tagline, "Towards a clean and secure energy future for European citizens." Its purpose is to explore the economic, political and technological feasibility of developing a space-based solar power program within the next decade. But only for European citizens. If you can't present your passport at the wall socket, you'll have to launch your own satellite, damn it. They want to come to a decision on whether to proceed by 2025, which hopefully explains why the Brits left the European Union. But leaving aside the EU, the field has been moving incredibly quickly. The Americans decided last year that if the UK, the European Union, China and Japan are in the game, they have to play it too. So basically, everyone's doing it because they think everyone else is doing it, which about sums up my recollection of high school. NASA announced in May 2022 that they are working on a report that will re-examine space-based solar power, and the American Foreign Policy Council recently stressed the military applications. A space-based solar power station could be used, for example, to remotely recharge drones. A 2021 analysis valued the global market for space-based solar power at about $450 million and projected it to reach $850 million by 2029. I think seeing how much happened last year, this is likely to be an underestimate. But how does it work? Here's the basic idea. You launch the power station piecewise into space and assemble the pieces in a geostationary orbit. That's an orbit around the equator about 36,000 kilometers altitude. An object on such an orbit remains in a fixed position relative to the surface without requiring propulsion, and it'll be in the sunlight more than 99% of the time. You collect the solar energy up there, convert it into electromagnetic waves, and send a beam of that to your ground station. The ground station is basically an area of receiving antennas, or rectennas for short. To make sure that the beam doesn't go astray, the ground station emits a target signal that the space station can aim at. The options that have been proposed for the beam are either a laser or microwaves. The benefit of a laser would be that it spreads less during transmission. However, the problem with lasers is that they are expensive and inefficient. And this is why, at the moment, pretty much all designs use microwave beams instead. The frequency of the microwave beam is typically a few gigahertz. That's similar to what your microwave oven or wireless router works with. It's a good frequency range because the atmosphere of Earth is almost transparent in this range. The intensity in the center of the beam is typically around some 100 watts per square meter. For comparison, the sunlight intensity on the equator can be as high as 1000 watts per square meter, whereas a cloudy winter day in the UK makes it to maybe 100. So beaming that power down from space is probably not going to make the pigeons fall out of the sky deep fried. However, the comparison with sunlight is somewhat misleading because in the beam, all this energy is in microwaves, and microwaves interact with objects differently than sunlight. Depending on the exact wavelength, microwaves can enter living tissue up to some centimeters of depth. So a better comparison than sunlight may be your wireless router. At a distance of about 1 meter, it emits typically a few tenths to a few hundred microwatts per square meter. The beam from those stations delivers 1 million times more. The major design challenge for those solar arrays in space is that the panels need to be oriented towards the sun, whereas the beam needs to be oriented towards Earth. And also, you don't want one part of the thing to cast a shadow on another part. There are several ways that scientists and engineers have come up with to get this done. The Chinese researcher Hu Xinbing put forward what's called the multi-rotary joints SPS. That's basically a line of solar panels that can rotate independent. That way, the panels can be oriented towards the sun while the transmitter points at the ground station. This system would weigh about 10,000 tons and be 12 kilometers long. The American John Mankins proposed a design called SPS Alpha that keeps the solar panel.
Okay, now they're talking about the engineering part, which is interesting, but I was more interested to know about the science part of it. So, and so what they're doing, so I got confused between this part about comparing when she was comparing sunlight with microwaves.
So like they're basically converting this sunlight into microwave and sending it down to Earth, right? And the
Yes,
receiving antennas will convert that microwave energy into electricity.
yes. So that's the idea. So what was the difference that she told that? Can we look at, did you understand, or should we look it back? Like
My understanding is that
between,
she is saying it is not directly comparable to sunlight because solar like the solar panels, they are converting sunlight directly to the sunlight energy to electricity. But
yes,
this system is not exactly beaming sunlight, but the energy from the sunlight is being converted to
as an
wavelength
okay,
into microwave.
yes,
And she's saying this is comparable to like the routers or other electronics that emit microwave, not exactly sun. So we are using the sun's energy, and essentially everything in this universe, or at least in the solar system, energy is sun. So we are
yes,
using the sun, but the type of energy we are extracting from is from microwave, not the sun.
okay, okay.
Is my
So,
understanding.
okay. So is it more or less efficient? Probably definitely it can be more efficient.
I mean, it will be probably
Just to
less
be
efficient
equal
because
or yes,
there is loss of energy probably
yes,
in all this conversion and transfer.
yes. But that lack of efficiency would be made up by the fact that it operates 24 hours a day. So yeah, that could offset that balance. Yes, so I think that was all about space-based energy.
At
Mm,
first, I thought it was more going to be like because I heard at least some headlines about data centers in space. So this is not exactly data center in space, but just the energy generation mechanism that will be in space.
Yes, in fact, today is the first time I heard about this company, like this, again, this technology. And I'm not sure which article it was. I've read multiple of those, but it says the CEO was trying to say that there's this whole plan about sending data, building data centers on space. So instead of doing that, why not create the energy on space and put the compute on Earth itself? So it just beam the energy down there. So that can solve a lot of problem. And okay, obviously, definitely he will definitely say that because that can justify the existence of his company. So definitely he will say that. That's one thing. But on the one hand, there is some logic to it because I think as far as putting equipments on space is concerned, it will require far less equipments to build the solar panels than to create a fully fledged data center. So definitely from one side, it is less cost efficient. Sorry, it's more cost efficient to put the energy on space and keep the compute on Earth. One negative thing that I can like come up with is this the environmental impact, all the noise, energy, like all the pollution that's and will come out from those data centers. Mostly the heat that will be generated again, that will affect the community. So putting them on space would get rid of all those problems. Like it's not going to affect Earth in any possible ways. So even if you put the compute on Earth. And besides that, there are other, just like this is a startup that's working on this kind of technologies, like emerging technology of putting beaming solar energy to Earth. There are also companies working on launching satellites, launching CPUs on space. In fact, the whole trend about talking about data centers on space started at around, I think, November or October of 2025 last year. And that was also the time when this company launched, I think, one NVIDIA H100 or H200 on space. I forgot the company. Let me see if I can find. Yes, StarCloud. This was the company, and it launched a NVIDIA H100 GPU aboard its StarCloud 1 satellite, which reached orbit in early November 2025 on a SpaceX Falcon 9 rideshare mission. So it was around this time that all this talk started about data centers in
Mhm.
space. And I think that's still the dominant thought that it will keep happening. In fact, that's the whole thing based on which SpaceX is trying to position itself. And the talk about SpaceX's IPO, that is a whole different conversation. In fact, I recently written about it. Not exactly about the IPO, but its potential acquisition of Cursor, which is an AI coding platform. Okay, so actually I wasn't planning to talk about it, but maybe I'll talk later on. But going with the plan, the next thing that I wanted to talk about was about Intel. So recently they had their first quarter results, and it was mostly a positive one compared to what they have been going through. Like, not objectively speaking, it's not good, but what as it is good as compared to what the analysts were expecting. So if you look at, let me, okay, is it annual? Yes. Okay, should be quarterly. So this is their most recent like quarter result where they had their revenue of $13.5 billion. So if you look at since December, it has been is the highest since December of 2024. And more importantly, I think this graphical thing will give a better idea. Obviously, in the past, they've been performing comparatively better than what it is. But the whole optimism around it is because that Intel was a dying company. It's like on its deathbed. That was the scenario with Intel over the recent years. But I think starting from 2025 onwards, it has had some changes. First of all, its CEO was replaced with the previous CEO was Pat Gelsinger and was replaced by Lip Butang. And I think in August of 2025, the US government has also talked about a lot of initiative on bringing Intel's manufacturing capabilities back. And that's why it's in a, and that's how you can see this better performance. So first of all, I'd like to start with some history about Intel's struggles, because otherwise people who do not know this won't get the context about what's happening and why this result, which objectively is very bad because it's a very old company. It's not a startup.
Mm.
So its net income is negative. It has been negative for as long as you can see. Yeah. Since 2022, it has been negative, negative, negative. This kind of negative revenue is only seen on new startups like OpenAI, Anthropic. I think they have negative. I'm not sure, but probably, and it is acceptable for those kind of companies, new companies, to have negative revenues, which is fine. But this is, I don't know, maybe I think it was created in the 50s, 60s, maybe. So it is quite an old company. Its peers, Nvidia, AMD, are some of the most valuable companies on earth, whereas they are like having negative revenues. It's like, yeah, they're in very bad condition. But why are analysts and people who follow Nvidia saying that this is a good thing? So historically, what happens was that Nvidia, up until the 2000s, they were one of the best chip companies in terms of CPU, both in design and manufacturing.
You mean
In
NVIDIA
fact,
or Intel?
oh, sorry, Intel. Yes, no, it's not Nvidia, Intel. Intel was one of the best companies there, both in terms of chip design and manufacturing. And uh, unlike companies like Nvidia, uh, Intel was an IDM, or there was an integrated manufacturer. So they not only designed the chips, but they also manufactured the chips. I mean, they manufactured it. They still do. I'll come to it, but I'm talking about what they were doing in the 2000s. So they were an integrated chip company, design as well as manufacturing. But and they were excellent in both of them. They were like they had the cutting edge technology in both the capabilities, both the manufacturing and as well as the design. And I think that made them a bit more overconfident and arrogant. And at the time, their main products were used in two areas, mostly in PCs and in certain cases, enterprise data centers. So those are the areas in which their CPUs were used, their processors were used. Now coming to the 2010s, one thing that they did was that there is something called the uh, ma chip manufacturing technology process. So that those are called as like 20 nanometer process, 25 nanometer, 14 nanometer process, and so on. So technically, they definitely have certain significance, like those nanometers means something within the manufacturing thing. But for non-technical people, whenever you hear like any process, like if someone says like they're working on a 10 nanometer process, or they're working on a 5 nanometer process. What we can infer is that a 5 nanometer process is a much more efficient way of making chips, I mean semiconductor chips, compared to a 10 nanometer process. So that's the explanation for non-technical terms. For the technical people, definitely is the distance between the transistor gates and so on. Those are the kind of reason is the distance between those kind of things. But yes, but for non-technical people, it might be hard to grasp those things. So during the 2010s, they were very good at 14 nanometer process node manufacturing. And instead of gradually trying to develop their technology, they suddenly made a jump of trying out on 10 nanometer systems, process nodes, which led to some difficulties and some delays. So there was an abrupt jump. They did not make a significant jumps. That is one of the reasons. That started the struggle. I'm not saying that is the only reason. In fact, people who are doing historical analysis about why Intel went from being such a good leader in the semiconductor industry to a struggling to the state that which they are now. Nobody has a perfect way of saying it, but they are coming up with different explanations, and this is one of them. It's the same as saying like, what started World War One? And no historian can point out that this exact activity started. If you listen to them, everybody will have their own theories and explanations about how it happened, why it happened. So similarly, this is the same thing happening. So these are the reasons that are found. The first one is this sudden jump, which caused certain complications in their processes. The second is they ignored the smartphone market, because 2010s smartphones were just simply on the beginning of the process, like of those things. And since they were already doing so good in the PC and data center market, so why focus on smartphone? And they did not realize how big smartphones would become and how much it would cost missing out on them. So it's something called the blue ocean strategy. I think so. A long time ago, I talked with you. It's like if you are good at something, if you're a market leader at something, that's the very thing that is your weakness. Your strength, your biggest strength is your biggest weakness. It's like if I am a car, like if I'm a Ford or Toyota, I'm a market leader at internal combustion engine cars. Why would I spend my time on building EV cars? I'm already a market leader. So I have a lot to lose, because if I create an EV car, I'm creating my own competition. And why would I do that? It's not the thing. But Tesla had nothing to lose. They did it. And now Tesla is worth more than all these ICE companies combined. So that's the blue ocean strategy, or what is it, strategy or situation, something like that. So if you're a market leader, you are your own biggest blockade, which also happened with Intel. That's the thing. And the third thing that I found was that this separation between chip design and chip manufacturing, they did not do it. I think so. They were the only leading company there. In fact, AMD also, once upon a time, they were also an integrated manufacturers, IDM. They also both had the design capacities and the manufacturing capacities. But in 2009, they separated. Right now, AMD is only a chip design company. It doesn't manufacture their own chips, which is done by TSMC. And the company that spun off from AMD, it's known as Global Foundries. It's still there. It is actually a very successful company. It's in its own right, but they're a separate company. They also manufacture chips or semiconductors. So this separation existed. And right now, the most successful companies are ones that have this separation. We have AMD, NVIDIA, those are chip design companies. And we have TSMC, which is a chip manufacturing company. Because I think one of the reasons is because as these technologies are getting more and more complicated, it becomes tougher to dedicate so much time and effort in both for a single company to spend so much time and effort in advancing both these technologies at the same time. They also have to come up with better chip designs, but they also have to work on on optimizing the manufacturing systems as well. So to work on those things has become much more complicated. And more importantly, Intel used their manufacturing capacity mostly for their own products. They did not use it as a source of revenue by offering to design or offering to manufacture someone else's products. So they did not fully capitalize on that potential as well. So a mixture of all those problems has caused Intel to lag behind its competitors throughout the 2010s and so far. And that is why Intel has been like almost like a dead company. Like obviously they are still in the CPU market, but it is nowhere near its competitors. Until this 2025 onwards. Because I think the main spark that resulted in this change is the geopolitical one. Because TSMC, its headquarters is in Taiwan, which is a geopolitically risky place because it is in close to China. Obviously, Taiwan TSMC has semiconductor fabrication plants in USA too, but it's still headquartered in Taiwan. So if something were to happen there, US's companies and USA itself will be affected. So what they want is a domestic manufacturer that can rival TSMC. And who else to choose but Intel, because they already have that potential. It's that they are in a very bad state now, but you are the best that we have got. And government has been making a lot of efforts in this stance. So let me go through what I put up. So what are the signs that Intel's foundry business is coming back? So broadly, I can categorize the factors that are bringing Intel back into two categories. One is the initiatives by government, and one is the partnerships with businesses, which I think is also in some ways being affected by the government too. But still, I've decided to keep them separate. From the government side, if you look, okay, so seems to have okay. Okay, first of all, let's look at what the US government has done. So back in 2024, it has finalized the 7.8 billion grant for supporting fabrication, like manufacturing plants in these areas, Arizona, Ohio, New Mexico, and so on. And then they've also provided them with loans and tax credits and so on. Defense companies are also using have provided $3 billion as per the CHIPS Act, which I think was initiated in 2022. And I think government has also taken some stake in Intel, 10 to 15%. I think it was announced again in July or August of 2025. So in all these ways, the US government is trying to support Intel. And one thing is that when government supports a company, they are in a very good positions. I think the best examples are the things that happened in 2008 financial crisis. So what happened then was that the banks were giving low quality loans to anyone and everyone in America. So the whole point about banks is that you have to assess a person ability to pay back the loans before you give it the loan, because that's your whole business. Like you make money through the interest and through the loan. So if you give money to anyone and if you do not get that money back, so not only are you not getting the interest back, you are probably not even getting the actual money back too. So that's a risky thing. But in short, the scenario in around 2008, or like in the period 2005 to 2008, was such that uh, they were giving loans to anyone. But when they were struggling, finally, when they were struggling, they should have gone bankrupt, but they didn't. The government backed up and they paid for all the mistakes that these companies had done. So the point I'm trying to make is that whenever a government decides to back a company, it becomes far more resilient, and the normal rules of the business world doesn't apply to them. So they become very resilient. It's like, suppose there are some memes that I see. Like suppose in a football match, I say that you can shoot wherever you want. I will move the goalpost so that you score a goal. It doesn't matter. You don't have to focus on the goal. Just shoot the ball. I'll move the goalpost and uh, make you score a goal. So that's the kind of situation a company is in. The rules of the business world doesn't apply to them. So I think that's one of the things that has given Intel this strength.
But like at some point they will have to show results, right? It will not be indefinite support.
Yes, obviously it has to show some results. And I think the truth is that they will be able to show it most likely. First of all, is because the reason I think they were not able to show is that because they existed in the free market world. And it's like if you lag behind a little bit, there is no way, it is very difficult to catch up again. But now that you are in some kind of taking testosterone, like you're taking steroids, now you can like catch up with the other people. It's like, yeah, so that's the best analogy that I can give. It's like, and because I think the underlying technology, they still have them. I'm not, but the experience around the company, they still have them. It's not a completely new company. So that is why instead of backing a completely new company, the US government has decided to focus on Intel. And moreover, they have brought in a new CEO who himself is a very experienced one. So let me see. Let's look at what Libutan's. So he started two semiconductor focused VC firms, Walden International. I think he still has a role, and Walden Catalyst. Again, it's the same thing. Okay. Before that, he was also the CEO of Cadence Design Systems from 2008 to 2021. And then, yes. And Cadence is again in the semiconductor supply chain itself. They are the ones that provide the software that is used to design those semiconductors. So from this, what we can figure out is that he's a very experienced person within the semiconductor industry. He has worked in different areas of semiconductor industry. So, so since he's a very experienced person, so I think he has the ability to manage and bring them back into the at the same competitive level as compared to TSMC and in terms of manufacturing.
But do you
And
also,
yes,
but do you know
yeah,
the news like there was a point where Trump was accusing him of being like a Chinese spy or something?
yes, I think yeah, I think a few months ago it was mentioned. But then again, recently they have been talking very friendly and so on. So then now, so I'm not sure how they are going on. Yes, I do remember he talking about them, but I think that was before this decision about backing Intel in August 2025. So let me ask AI what does it have to say. Okay, in August 2025, Trump publicly called for Tan to resign, accusing him of being highly conflicted over alleged ties to Chinese semiconductor firms. Okay, this formed within days of demanding his resignation. Trump backtracked and began to pivot toward reconciliation. After a White House meeting in August 2025, Trump publicly referred to Tan as an amazing story. So again, he changed his stance. So
Mm.
again, like talking about it's very unpredictable what Donald Trump's comments are at any given moment and how genuinely he is trying to say something. Like so what I've come to a conclusion is that he deliberately tries to confuse people. I think I was watching a Star Trek show, is an episode where like this they were fighting a spaceship and they're fighting an AI. So what they were doing is that they were moving in some patterns, and they said, okay, this AI is learning our patterns. So what is their solution? They said we have to bring randomness and chaos so that they cannot predict what you are doing. So the AI cannot predict what I'm doing.
Mm.
So I think Donald Trump is doing this kind of things. Like one day I'll say like I hate this person, the next day I'll say love. I'll be so unpredictable you can't predict what I'm going to do next. So I
Could
think
be a
this is his
strategy. Yeah.
strategy. Yes. It reminds me of that meme to the fake, what is it, Shanju or I forgot his name. This political, like this war strategist, ancient war strategy, Sanju.
Sun Tzu, yeah.
Yeah, Sanju. Uh, I'm sure it's not his real quote, but he says, to confuse your enemy, you must confuse yourself first. So I think that's what he's trying to do. So that's why his words doesn't hold much value in terms of trying to assess the truth. But the truth is that the US government is backing Intel. Now, the whole point this news came to me, like this idea of talking about it came to me because of two reasons. First of all, the recent quarterly results and the whole thing that people are excited that yeah, it is doing good. Okay, so that's one thing. And the second was that there were talk about Apple also having a deal with Intel in terms of manufacturing their chips, Apple's chips, because so far right now it's all being done by TSMC. And again, when I mean that they have signed a deal or they are working on signing a deal, it won't be sudden 100. It's not suddenly 100% of the manufacturing will come to Intel. It will be gradual. I think parts of it will happen from through Intel, and they'll still continue to work with TSMC. So if I mention Apple, there's the third thing. So I think over the past 1 or 2 years, these are the two other big companies. I'm not sure not when they did it. I think it's all these deals happen after uh, the US government decided to back Intel. Because from a business point of view, so if you think from other companies like other chip designers like Microsoft or Google who have their own chip designs and they're looking for a manufacturer. So from their point of view, they will only think about that who is going to give us the best quality of production, which definitely is not Intel because they are struggling right now. So they will naturally shift towards TSMC. And the problem for Intel was that they are actually working on new design processes like building smaller or more efficient chips. They have the technology is there. but they do not have the practical experience or the customers that are willing to take the risk on using their facilities to manufacture. So the natural market did not allow Intel to get a chance to show itself that we are improving. So they have the technology in theory and they have those things, but since for the last 10-15 years they have been lagging behind. No one is willing to take the risk on its own. But now that this kind of the government backing is there, and I am not sure whether there is any incentives given to Microsoft or Apple for partnering with Tesla, oh sorry, partnering with Intel. But if that's the case, or even if there's no direct incentive, maybe there's an indirect rationale behind it, because these companies also want to keep a good relation with the US government. So indirectly they are showing that they have a good relation by trying to get at least some of their workload shifted to Intel. Otherwise, like, yeah, they might get into trouble. So they want to keep maintain good relations there as well. So that's maybe one of the strategic reasons behind it.
Mhm.
So broadly, I think that's the whole story about Intel so far.
But what uh, is Apple going to partner with them for, or in terms of like fabrication? Is that the
Yes,
plan? Because they've already abandoned or stopped using Intel chips.
yes.
And
They will
at this
not,
point, they will not go back to Intel chips again because their chips are better.
yes. So deal is not about, I'm quite sure it's not about the using their chips, but it will be mostly about the fabrication or the manufacturing, using their foundry to manufacture, not for using their chips. So again, all those deals, like even for Microsoft, it is not about using Intel's chips. It is about using Microsoft using Intel's manufacturing capabilities to manufacture their chips.
But what chip is
So
Microsoft designing?
they are designing chips. I will let's look at what they are designing, because Microsoft, I think even Amazon is working on those. Google definitely has them.
Google has their TPUs and stuff.
TPUs, yeah. Maya 100 launching 2023. So it's an in-house AI training and inference accelerator for their Azure cloud platforms. And now currently, I think it has to be manufactured by TSMC. Again, Maya 200 is the second generation of those things. Again, Maya 300 being designed for US-based production rather than Taiwan, explicitly to de-risk from Taiwan-centric supply chain. Intel is intended as the US foundry partner. So for 300, they are working with, they're
So
planning
it
to
seems their
use,
chip design is for internal use, not
yes,
for other customers.
yes. So far it looks like that it's for internal use for their data centers. It looks like for data centers, not even for their PCs or, yeah. And that's where all the things, in fact, as you all know, like even the memory companies are abandoning normal memories for AI related, uh, yeah. Okay. Horizontal link fabricating, yeah. So those are the kind of things. Intel Foundry gets its single largest external customer and a showcase win for 18A. So I was talking 18A is one of their latest manufacturing technology. I think was it 18A or 14A? I don't know which one is more advanced, but yeah. So this is their new manufacturing technology that they're working on. But people were not willing to trust them, like because they already have a trusted supplier in TSMC. But with that, they are now challenging TSMC. So this is what they're doing. So now talking about now, since I heard about this thing, vertical integration playing into AI hardware. Now Tesla is also, now we all know about their Gigafactory where they build all those Teslas. Now Elon Musk has also talked about something called the Terafab, where they are going to work on chips as well. So I want to know what that is. So let me just ask and look what this is. And I want to know if Intel is going to play any part there or not. Is Tesla's Terafab is Elon Musk's push to build a massive vertically integrated semiconductor fabrication ecosystem, tying together Tesla, SpaceX, xAI, and Intel into a next generation AI chip factory. In simple terms, it's Tesla's plan to stop relying mainly on outside foundries and instead build on its own AI compute engine at both on Earth and in orbit. The Terafab is a plant that aims to produce more than 1 terawatt of AI compute capacity per year, fully integrate chip design, fabrication, memory, advanced packaging, and testing under one roof. Musk called this one roof a vertically integrated fab.
So
Okay,
if it
as
is
we
Tesla's semiconductor complex, then why is Intel the one manufacturing it?
yes,
It has to be their side.
yes, that's what I was thinking. And I think the logical conclusion is that more, so it's not a opinion. It's my logical conclusion is that they will have to acquire Intel at some point. I think that can be it's a logical inference because that is what Elon Musk's plan is, and that I think might happen because okay, so as I said that I was mentioning about SpaceX deciding to acquire Cursor, the AI coding tool lab. So it might seem like why does a space company want an AI coding tool lab? So I'll tell you what happened in the past 1 year or so. So xAI, the AI company that has Grok, I think in March of 2025, about a year ago, they acquired X, the social media platform. So xAI and X, the social media platform and the AI platform, became a single company. Then in February of 2026, this year, this merged company was acquired by SpaceX, merged into SpaceX. So now the space company, the AI company, and the social media company are a single company now. So in some ways, uh, the argument that I was making was that now it is in a way, from an AI perspective, it is vertically integrated to a large extent. I think one area, yes, again, apart from chip manufacturing, I think, and chip design as well, because technically Tesla is a separate company, and Tesla has their own chips, but those chips are mostly for autonomous driving, are specifically designed for AI autonomous driving, not for LLM kind of AI compute. So I'm not like I don't know the details, but it looks like that architecture for autonomous driving won't work for LLM kind of inference and training tasks. So those are different. So they still do not have in-house AI chips, for LLM kind of tasks, obviously. They have that AI for Tesla autonomous driving, but technically Tesla and AI are not the same company, even though they have the same owner, but they are two different companies. That's one thing, and they neither have the design or nor they have the able to manufacture them. So they do not have those kind of things. But SpaceX has the capacity to launch. It comes back to data centers in space. So to put data centers in space, you have to launch things on space. And SpaceX is the best company right now. And they're also working on those reusable rockets. And once it becomes feasible, reusable rockets, the cost goes down drastically. And it is
Is it not
obvious
already
because
feasible?
I think it's testing, like it's going on its test phase. It's not operational yet. It's in its test phase. I think you can see a lot of videos where they're catching those rockets, but those are still in their testing phase. They are not using it for operational purposes yet. I think it will be in very soon. Maybe I'm not sure, but I think so. It will be. It is inevitable. It is. I think in the final stages. And once that happens, the cost will come down drastically because it's like the example that Elon Musk gives is that you buy a plane ticket to some place, and instead of the plane landing, you take a parachute and you go down, and the plane crashes. And so suppose now if for every travel, if they have to make a new plane, imagine how expensive plane tickets will be, because the tickets are cheap because you can reuse the same plane multiple times. So that's the whole logic behind reusable rockets. So if you can use the same rockets multiple times, yes, the cost would go much lower. And I think in terms of rocket technology, SpaceX has the best option out there. So that's the part that they have. And talking about uh, data centers, even though they do not have their own chips, but they have their own data center. That's another thing. Having their own chips is one thing, and having a data center is another thing. Because the data center is a complete package. I think in fact the biggest AI data center is held by Grok or the xAI. It is called the Colossus. Let me show you.
So it has all the NVIDIA GPUs, right?
Yes. So the GPUs within them is not theirs, but the whole thing is theirs. It's like the difference between a CPU and a laptop. So NVIDIA doesn't create laptops, but they have their only GPUs. Intel has their CPUs. So in the same way, Lenovo is the one manufacturing the laptop, but they do not own the CPUs. It's being outsourced. It's the same thing. xAI has the laptop, I mean the data center, but they do not have their own processors. And that's the thing, what Microsoft is doing through vertically integrating. They also, metaphorically speaking, using the example, they own the laptop, they also own the processor. So they own the Azure data center, but they also own the processors that are running the data centers. That's the kind of integration that Microsoft are achieving, which xAI, or in this case SpaceX, now since it's been acquired, they do not have that kind of uh, integration. So let me see. I think it's the Colossus data center, probably. Yes, it is not. Yes, this xAI is. It is not. Okay, so officially there's no the largest data center. No data center has that title, but xAI's data center is one of the largest ones out there. So in that case, they still have their own way, their own processing place. Unlike companies like Anthropic does not own their own data centers. They use different companies' data centers. In fact, I think I recently found a news about them partnering with SpaceX for their data centers, or maybe X for their Colossus data centers, or those kind of things. So in that case, Anthropic is not as vertically integrated with xAI. So now SpaceX has the ability to launch. So point number one, they have the ability to launch. Two, they have the data center, even though they do not have the chips, but they have the data center. Now third, they have the AI models, Grok. And fourth is a constant stream of data they require, which they get through xAI, sorry, the X Twitter platform. At least some kind of proprietary data they have, which other companies may not have access to. At least freely they do not have access to. So even if they want to access it, they will have to access through the API and so on. So indirectly, they are also making money off that proprietary data from X Twitter. So that is the kind of vertical integration that they have achieved so far. So again, if Elon Musk wants to vertically integrate, so the logical outcome would be to acquire Intel, which might happen. You will never know. So because as you have also mentioned, and as it's also mentioned here, his whole push is to build a massive vertically integrated semiconductor fabrication ecosystem, tying together. So if it has to be vertically integrated, it has to be everything has to be owned by a single company to be called it vertically integrated. That's the whole point of being called vertically integrated. If multiple companies are owning those things, it's not vertically integrated. So maybe Intel might get acquired. And that brings me to the final point, which I forgot. Why are they trying to acquire Cursor? So the application layer is the final layer of the AI stack. So the whole point of this thing is that it has to be applied somewhere. All this data, all these AI models to make money. Because AI model itself, you can't make money of those. Like it has to be applied somewhere. So by owning a coding software platform, they are also now have that presence in the application layer too. In fact, in that article, I mentioned it very properly. Let me see if I
But
can find.
Cursor already has you can in Cursor, like from what I have used, you can choose which model you want to run. And not only that, if you have subscribed to the API or whatever it's called for
Yes.
the AI model, then you can directly use that in Claude or in Cursor. So if they acquire or they buy Cursor, they have to make it exclusively XAI. XAI Grok has to be the exclusive model available for it to make sense. Otherwise, it is an option that is already available.
Yes. So yeah, one way they can go about, so from my point of view, one way they can go about is to make XAI the only possible model available. But again, this might also create a, like, people might not like it. Like, why should I only use one platform? So the other option is to allow all the other competing AI models too. But even then, they still win it because now SpaceX, or they own Cursor. So regardless of whoever model they are using, it's their product. It's Cursor. As long as people are using Cursor, they're using their product. So whatever revenue they get through, so I'm sure Cursor has some subscription models. So did you use the free version of the subscription one?
Free model itself, I don't know about the subscription, but maybe in the subscription they will give you some higher, uh, more access to the AI models. But if you have their API access to the model itself. You can directly use the API. You can enter the API keys, etc., and you can directly access the model without paying Cursor, is what I'm saying.
Okay, okay.
So you understand,
So
like,
then they, yes,
yeah.
yes, I get it. So cursor doesn't have much to do. Yeah.
So Cursor
So
is putting all this together, like you are it is generating the code, but the model you're interacting with, you have paid
yes,
for the API key separately.
okay. So in that way,
I,
app,
at least that was the case. Maybe Cursor also has a subscription system where if someone doesn't want to bother with buying API keys, they can subscribe and they will have similar to how Perplexity works. Like if you have a subscription, you
yes,
can use higher model or higher tiers of the different models.
yes.
So
But
maybe
yes, but the way you mentioned it, like suppose, for example, so let's say I have a subscription for ChatGPT, but I do not have a subscription for Perplexity. In that way, I cannot use uh, ChatGPT's subscription features within Perplexity. That I cannot do. I need to have a
yeah.
Perplexity subscription. But what you're saying in case of Cursor is that even though I do not have uh, a subscription for Cursor, but if I have API keys for, are there subscription for API keys as well?
I don't know if it's no, it is based on like per million output tokens and stuff. So depends on how much you
Okay,
have used the model. It's it's a rate. There's a rate. It's not one subscription.
okay.
So per million token, it's some 20 cents or depending on the model. So that's how it works.
Yes. This Cursor is model agnostic by design, so you're not locked into one provider. Typical options include OpenAI models, Anthropic models, Google database. So Cursor lets you switch models per task when you need deep reasoning. So now I'll ask, so how does Cursor make money? Switch models per task. Cursor makes money primarily by charging users and teams for access to its AI-powered code editor, while burning through a large chunk of their revenue on underlying AI model and infrastructure costs. In a sense, with a high cost. Paid Cursor offers free tiers and paid tiers. Higher tier unlock more powerful models and higher priority inference, which is more expensive to run. So the pricing is partially turned into cost subsidized savvy customers. So what's the next question I should ask? Like, should I ask like, what if I use my own API keys
Yeah, that
inside
is what I
of?
was thinking. Yeah.
Okay, can I use my own keys for Anthropic
For a model.
or Anthropic? Website?
So that is like
Oh,
now they require a paid plan. So initially, I think it was free.
okay. So now to unlock that feature of using custom API, there's again subscription for that. Cursor lets you enter your own Anthropic by this once very high. So can you use Cursor for free? Short answer, no, not anymore. Community documentation Cursor forum indicate the ability to add your own personal API key has been restricted to at least their pro tier plan, and the free tier can no longer add custom keys. So now they have different plans where you can get access to different features. Okay. If you really want to pay only Anthropic, keep using plain Cursor Pro plus your Anthropic API. If you only want to code in Cursor without paying either Cursor or Anthropic, you're better off using free tier for the lighter, lower powered models. Okay. So that means there has to be some tier over the Pro. But enterprise are positioned as the top offering. But what if I'm an individual user? In addition to Cursor's built-in models, you can plug in your own API keys. Obviously, I know this. Proteor lets you use Cursor's own AI and in many cases your own Anthropic. Okay, so Proteor, you can also use other means even if you do not have your own API keys, you can use directly there. Plus, you can also use their own API keys. So, what difference does it make? No difference. So buying the Proteor means like you get access to all the models anyway. So why use separately? Is that what I'm getting here? And
No,
then
like what do you mean? In Proteor, it allows you to use the model keys that you have read.
yes, but even if I did not generate any API keys from other models, I can still use. They will also. I think that is what they're trying to say. That
Yeah, but there will be limit then.
only.
The difference is that if you use it through
Okay.
Cursor, then the inference for that is in Cursor's infrastructure.
Okay.
If you use API keys, it is going to the Anthropic model, or OpenAI model, or Gemini.
Okay. In which case I am paying for the inference, like whatever charges are
Eh,
happening.
Yeah,
Okay. So in that case, that is actually good for Cursor because now they do not have to bear that cost. But so that's what I'm trying to say is that if I'm not now as a user, that's negative for me because I'm also paying for the pro subscription for Cursor. Plus, I'm also now paying extra for all the inference costs that will come through using that API of that model. But on the other hand, if I use the existing AI models, like the ones that Cursor is offering in their pro subscription anyway, then at least I don't have to pay extra.
yeah.
Or will there be some limits if I use their default like the models that they are offering?
The ones they offer will most likely have limits. And if you use an API
Okay.
key, it is more individual or more catered to you. You have been using it for different cases, and I think it will be cheaper as
Okay.
well. I mean, ultimately, you're paying the pro tier,
Okay.
but you can get more done with an API key than with whatever limit they have set.
Okay. Okay. Obviously, again, as you said, it was free, but now it's not anymore because now they also have to think about monetization. So initially it was all about getting all the users through giving the free trials, but now they have to come up with way to make money out of this. So as from this you can see that Cursor will make money regardless of whatever model you use. And by association, whoever owns cursor will make money regardless of whichever model the user uses on cursor. So it makes sense for them to use their to acquire cursor. So I think these are the only topics that I had for today. I don't have anything much for now, but all I want to just end by saying that there is something that I'm working on. Like one of the things a person requires to understand news and updates, the kind of things that we're doing, is to have sufficient background knowledge on the topic. Otherwise, it won't be relevant. For example, if you watch any football talk show, like for example, I watch where they are talking about this player doing that and that and reviewing matches. It will only make sense if for someone who watches football on a daily basis. For example, if I watch a basketball post game show, I won't get any context. I don't know the players. I don't even know the rules properly.
Mhm.
So it won't make much sense to me. So I think the same applies to technology and business, the things that we cover here without much sufficient knowledge. So that is what I'm working on right now. I think maybe this week I'll already publish one video on my own. It is about the electronics, broadly two categories. One is the electronics manufacture industry and one is the semiconductor industry. I'll talk about these are the two broad areas, and then I'll talk for each of the areas, the general structure, and then I'll also talk about where India is in that whole supply chain or the whole map. So once the theoretical foundation is there, then what happens is that when you or someone else listens to some small news or updates that I talk about in this kind of videos, then they'll get a better context of what I'm trying to say. Otherwise, like it'll go over people's head. Even it'll like in the same case, it'll go over my head if someone talks to me about a topic which I have no context about. So that's what I'm working on. So that's the one thing that I wanted to say. So I think that should be it for now.
Okay.
Okay.